The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Longman Simplified. English Series. Read by ดวงหฤทัย พรหมา Chapter 11. On the Island. When Tom awoke in the morning, he wondered where he was. He sat up and rubbed his eyes and looked around. Then he remembered it was the cool grey dawn, and there was a delightful sense of peace in the deep calm and silence of the woods. Not a leaf stirred, dewdrops stood upon the leaves and grass. A white layer of ashes covered the fire, and the blue trace of smoke rose straight into the air. Joe and Huck still slept. Now, far away in the woods, the birds called. Another answered. Gradually the cool dim grey of the morning white, and as gradually sounds multiplied and life revealed itself. The marvel of natural shaking off leaves and going to work unfolded itself to the boy. A little green worm came crawling over a dewy leaf. Tom sat as still as a stone, with his hopes rising and falling as the creatures still came towards him or showed a tendency to go elsewhere. When it finally came down upon Tom's leg and began a journey over him, his whole heart was glad, for that meant that he was going to have a new suit of clothes, without a shadow of doubt, a glorious piratical uniform. Now, a procession of ants appeared and went about their labors. One struggled with a dead spider 5 times as big itself, and dragged it straight up a tree trunk. A tiny spot beetle climbed up the great height of a glass blade, and Tom bent down close to it and said, "Ladybird, Ladybird, fly away home. Your house is on fire. You shouldn't alone." She flew off to see about it, which did not surprise the boy, for he had long known that the ladybird was always ready to believe stories about fires. The birds were singing smelly by now. One swept down and flashed blue flames and stopped on the branch, almost within the boy's reach. It turned its head to one side and eyed the strangers with immense curiosity. All nature was wide awake. Long beams of sunlight pierced down through the leafy branches, and a few butterflies came dancing upon the scene. Tom roused the other pirates, and in a minute or two they were chasing after following over each other the shallow water of the sandbar. The current had carried off their raft, but this only delayed them, since its going was something like burning the bridge between them and civilization. They came back to camp wonderfully refreshed and as hungry as wolves. They soon had the campfire branching up again. Huck found a spring of clear cold water close by, and the boys made cups of leaves. Tom and Huck stepped to a promising place on the river bank and threw in their fishing lines. Almost immediately, they had their rivers enough fish for a family. They flied the fish and were astonished, for no fish had ever seemed so delicious before. They did not know that the quicker a fresh water fish on the fire after it is caught, the better it is, and they did not stop to think that sleeping, exercise, and bathing in the open air had given them an excellent appetite. They lay about in the sheds after breakfast, while Huck had a smoke and then went off through the woods exploring. They found plenty of things to be alive with, but nothing to be astonished at. They had a swim every hour, so It was about the middle of the afternoon when they got back to camp. They were too hungry to stop to fish, but they had a good meal of meat and threw themselves down in the chairs to talk. But the talk soon began to drain and then die. The quietness that hung over the woods and the sense of loneliness began to have an effect on the spirit the boys. A vague longing crept upon them. This took them shape precisely. It was budding homesickness. Even Fenrir's hand was dreaming of his doorstep and his empty burrows. But they were ashamed of their weakness, and none was brave enough to say what was in his mind. For some time now the boys had heard a peculiar sound in the distance. On hearing a louder sound, the boys started, glanced at each other inquiringly, and listened. There was a long silence, deep and unbroken. Then dull sound came floating down out of the distance. "What is it?" asked Joe in a whisper. "Let's go and see," said Tom. They sprang to their feet and hurried to the bank facing the village. They passed the bushes and peered out. The little steam ferry boat was not transporting people from bank to bank as usual, but was about a mile below the village. Her deck seemed closed with people. There were many small boats being rowed about or floating with the current in the neighborhood of the ferry boat, but the boy could not see what the men in them were doing. After times there was a puff of white smoke from the side of the ferry boat, and as it rose in a lazy cloud, that same dull sound and burned to the listeners again. "I know now," exclaimed Tom. "Somebody is drowned." "That's it," said Huck. "They did that last summer when Bill Turner was drowned. They shoot a big gun over the water, and that makes the body come up to the surface." The boys continued to listen and watch. Then a revolting thought flashed through Tom's mind, and he exclaimed, "Boys, I know who are drowned. We are." They felt like heroes in an instant. They were missed. They were being waved over. Hearts were breaking for them. And best of all, they were the talk of the whole town, and the envy of all the boys. This was glorious. It was worth while being a pirate after all. As twilight drew on, the ferry boat went back to her accustomed business, and the rowing boats disappeared. The pirates returned to camp. They were swollen with vanity over their new importance, and the great trouble that they were causing. They caught fish, cooked supper and ate it, and then began to guess what the village was thinking and saying about them. But when the shadows of night closed round them, they gradually ceased to talk and sat gazing into the fire, with their minds eventually wandering elsewhere. The excitement had gone now, and Tom and Joe could not keep out thoughts of certain persons at home who were not enjoying their fine adventures as much as they were. A sign or two escaped unawares. "Tom," said Joe hesitatingly, "pirates do go home sometimes, don't they?" Tom poured scorn upon him. Huck had not said a word on the subject, and was therefore free to join in with Tom. Joe made excuses and firmly denied that he was suffering from homesickness, or that he wished to desert. As the night deepened, Huck began to nod and presently fell asleep. Joe followed next. Tom lay watching the two for some time. At last, he got up cautiously and went searching among the glass in the dim light of the campfire. He picked up and inspected several large pieces of the thin white bark of a tree, and finally chose two. Then he knelt by the fire and wrote something on each of these in pencil. One he rolled up and put in his coat pocket, and the other he put the Joe's cup together with certain invaluable schoolboy treasures, among them a piece of chalk, a rubber ball, 3 fish hooks, and special kind of marble. Then he tiptoed away.